In other news, Mayor John Tory calling for a national mental health summit as disturbing youth violence and multiple TTC attacks leave Torontonians on edge. He joins us live now with more on how he thinks the mental health crisis should be addressed. Mayor, good morning to you.
Morning, Tammie.
I'll start off.
I was going to say, I just think that, the first thing we have to do is get together as governments, because right now we're not treating mental health as health in the same way we would if you had a heart problem or a lung problem. And I think that's going to be a start. And part of it is just that it's one of those areas, unlike the pandemic, we proved in the pandemic, if all the governments worked together in a cooperative manner, you could take on almost anything. That was an extraordinary challenge to us. And so I just think we have to do the same with mental health. And it starts with getting just the leadership, not 400 people in some big conference, just the leadership of the governments in a room, from the cities, the province, and the federal government, with some health experts, and say who has to do what now to stem what is a crisis in cities, not just Toronto. It's not limited to Toronto at all, but in cities right across the country.
All right. And we'll start with Toronto, though, and with especially these attacks on the TTC. We've seen at least 6 serious incidents over the last 5 days. 2 of them happening yesterday on its own. 16-year-old boy at one point thought to be in life-threatening condition. People are definitely on edge. You can really feel it here we've been announcing some of these, on a daily basis, unfortunately. What can you tell Torontonians about what can be done immediately? For months, we've been talking about upping security on the TTC, but clearly there's something that's still missing.
Well, I think we have to move forward with those efforts to increase the presence of people that can both be helpful to those who are homeless, for example, and we're doing that. I mean, the budget, provisions that I put forward, and some have been very critical of them, substantially increased the number of TTC special constables and homeless outreach workers on the TTC. And those are things that are in the budget right now that I've put forward. And I hope when we vote on that budget on the 14th of February, I can tell you I will be voting for those additions. I was on the transit system myself last night and saw an increased presence of special constables and so on. I have been on the phone continuously with Chief Demkew of the police and with TTC CEO Rick Leary, and I can just assure you I think we'll have more to say about this today in terms of making sure that we address, through the presence of people and otherwise, safety on the TTC, which, notwithstanding these very, very disconcerting and troubling incidents that have happened, kind of, as you say, in a serial way, we still move millions of people safely every day. We will continue to do so because our paramount objective has to be the safety of the employees and the passengers, of course, on the TTC, and we'll have more to say about that later on.
So, yes, I was just going to ask you about that. Will there be some type of announcement or reaction later on with you as well as with the Chief of Police?
We've been meeting continuously, and we're having a meeting again on Friday all together in a room. But we've been talking continuously, and the objective of that is to continue to find ways in which we can, have that greater feeling of safety and security, and address some of the concerns that, obviously, deep concerns that have come out of the events of the last 2 days. So we will, I expect, to have more to say about that quite shortly, and that we are trying to take action beyond what, as I say, I saw with my own eyes when I was there last night, which is an increased presence of special constables and others, to just have people know there are eyes and ears that are there with them, trying to help out to make sure that people stay safe, operators and passengers.
Right. And the operators as well have come forward saying that they are scared themselves and they're just doing their job. However, there have been several attacks on employees, including Monday night, 2 employees were attacked in an alleged swarming, as well as yesterday morning, 2 employees chased with a syringe. When it comes to having more visibility, uniformed officers and special constables there on the TTC, what else then protects those people from those attacks?
Well, let's remember, and I'm not trying to minimize the challenge in front of us, but it is not possible. We have, I think, 2,000 vehicles or something. It's not possible to have a person on every vehicle to watch over the safety of passengers and operators. So I think we have to use technology. We have to use all the means at our disposal. But I think in the end, it's going to also rely on the behavior of people, on us making sure that those who are in need of support out in the community get that support, so they don't, sort of find the TTC a place where they can end up in situations that put everybody at risk. And so I would just tell you that we're very much on top of this. We're working with the union. They come to our meetings as well. And we're going to start to use the operators out there as much more of an intelligence gathering, group that can just help us understand better what happens with people. The very fact we're doubling the number of people that are homeless counselors and outreach workers in respect of homelessness indicates that we recognize, for example, there are more people who are finding refuge on the transit system who are in need of that kind of support as opposed to anything else. And so I would just ask people to make sure they tell their counselors to support the measures that are in the budget to enhance the presence of all these people that are there to protect the safety of the passengers and the employees, just as an example.
Are you concerned that this will stop people from returning to the TTC, where after the pandemic we're up to 70%, of pre-pandemic levels? But now there are people that at least I hear anecdotally who are talking about saying, forget it, I am driving, I'm taking the car, I'm taking an Uber, I'm trying to get around in another way, just because these are random attacks in some points and people don't feel like they can protect themselves.
I think the main reason people are not returning to work 5 days a week to the office is because people like the flexibility that they have achieved during the pandemic for themselves in doing their work from home. So I think that's the main factor, but there is no question but that we have to make sure there's a safe, reliable TTC transit system to get people downtown because the majority come that way. And so I'm meeting with major employers this very morning to continue to have that discussion. But part of it is to make sure that through means like the people we're deploying on the TTC to be visible and to protect the safety of operators and passengers, that we do everything we can to have people feel confident using the TTC, because that is one, but not the only factor that helps us to get people back to work, which we need to do. We need to revitalize and renew the downtown, and that means more people spending more time, not every single day, every hour, but more time at work in the office, like we saw previous to the pandemic.
There is a police services board meeting, of course, that's beginning in a couple of hours. Youth violence, is that something that will be on the agenda today? And this is not just when it comes to what's happening on the TTC, but we've had several incidents, serious incidents that have locked down schools. And we've talked about this before here on the show as well, but also attempted murders and charges that have been laid against 13, 14-year-olds now. And I know this may be part of this mental health aspect as well, but is this something that police are going to be talking about today?
Yes, they are. In particular, they're going to be reviewing some efforts that have been made with some people from the Somali community in the northwest of the city, where there was a very focused effort to try and address some of the root causes of the violence that we saw with some of those kids who were good kids from good families, but they were having some of these episodes. So yes, it's a deeply troubling part of what's been going on in a broader sense. I mean, why would any young person of that age be involved in a swarming or stabbing? Why would any young person of that age be carrying a weapon, whether it's a replica weapon or a real weapon, to school? Why would schoolyard, disagreements of the past now have devolved into, stabbings and things like that? So this is a much deeper kind of problem. But again, I have convened the school board, the police, the city, and we've made some real progress on both sharing information with each other, but also deploying some of the programs offered by the federal government and otherwise to fund some ways in which we can support those young people and try and keep them focused in the right direction in the areas that have been sort of hotspot areas for this kind of trouble in the city. So we're doing the best we can on what is a very complex problem that I think has some of its answers in maybe post-pandemic, instability people have, but I don't think it's as simple as just saying it's that.
And have you gotten reaction yet to your call for a national mental health summit? Have you gotten reaction provincially and federally from government leaders?
No, nothing much provincially, but I have had the support of a lot of other mayors. And I will tell you, when I first raised this subject 2 or 3 years ago at the big city mayors meeting from big city mayors for across the country, it hadn't been discussed before, but all of them said when I raised it, we have all those problems too. I mean, people should, I don't take any comfort from this, but I at least know when I can talk to my colleagues around the country, they too are facing incidents of violence on their transit systems. They too are facing this kind of disruptive, environment in the schools. And so I think there's a great deal of support for us all getting together, as we started to talk about at the outset today, and just for once and for all saying who's going to do what, how are we going to pay for it, but we have to do better and treat mental health as health, which we haven't been doing. We've been kind of put it off to the side. It can't be put off to the side. It's a health issue, a big one.
All right. Mayor John Tory, thank you so much for joining us again this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tammie. Okay.